Morning. Welcome to the March 12th service of the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Grand Traverse. My name is Dan, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm also a member of the Sunday Services Committee and very happy to coordinate today's service. So it's mid-March, starting the last full week of winter, and what a week. So exciting it had to start an hour early. And then on Tuesday, we'll all wear green so we can honor one of our most popular saints. Right? And Wednesday, the Ides of March, so beware. Yeah, so, excuse me, I look a little dazed. I was in Vancouver all this week, and I got home late last night. My personal time zone somewhere west of here. So, any visitors here today? If you're comfortable, rise, introduce yourself. I'd like to get to know you if we get a chance. Oh. Hi, Holly. Any others? Well, welcome, and welcome to our friends online. I'd like to invite you all to, if you have any joys or concerns today that you'd like to share, we have a little book over here to my right. The next 10 or 15 minutes or so, if you can go over there, if you have anything, joys, concerns, things you want to mention to share with the congregation, please do so. Reverend Alex will be sharing those later after the offering. Today's service is Addiction from Both Sides, which I understand was a topic that was chosen by the winner of an auction. We might hear a little bit more about that later, but it's a very nice topic, and thank you for that. We're happy to get this one in. We know there's lots of addictions. I think we all have seen too many. I don't really need to list them. Many are more harmful than others. Some can be devastating. They don't all involve substances or gambling, but we've all seen too much of it. It's a topic I have some experience with as child parents who use far too much alcohol and tobacco. Although they were spared the most devastating effects of those substances, they did die young. And they passed on to their children an uncomfortable familiarity with substance abuse. My family had to deal with my drinking, pot, erratic behaviors for far too many years. And I'm fortunate they cared for me and loved me through it. I think we all recognize that addictions are lifelong. Even if they're temporarily abated, they don't go away. They need to be addressed primarily as mental health and social issues, even while criminals or penalties are often, unfortunately, necessary. I want to say I learned a lot in AA, mostly by hearing other people's stories, which can be pretty hard to hear. It taught me to look inside, look at my behaviors, motivations, consider how to talk about them openly, and then start to deal with them. Unfortunately, I also learned that AA really wasn't for me. It's got a heavy reliance on a sentient God who is watching me all the time, and he is the only hope for a cure, and he is also the cause of the disease. It was all kind of confusing. Fortunately, there is AA groups, atheists and agnostics. There are two in town, I think, here, or there were when I was going. They don't pray, and they follow the 12 steps quite well without that. It can be very helpful, and I strongly encourage it to anybody who is looking for help. But with all I learned in AA, I did not learn how to not drink. But fortunately, other cures do work. As with other mental health conditions, counseling, behavior modification, drugs can be effective for a lot of people. Those approaches need to be accepted, and they need to be available. And this has to include services for the families also, of course, the families of the addicts. We need something other than emergency shelters and foster care. So it's a big topic and a tough one. Thank you, Alex, for taking it on. Thank you to our auction winners for suggesting it. And we will get on with the service. First, we have a prelude with Julie Galvatz.
Whoever you are and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here this morning. I was joking with Dan earlier that we both seem to have gotten the blue memo today. So those of you wearing blue, good on you too. I'm Reverend Alex. I'm the minister here at UUCGT. I use the pronouns he and him. And I say welcome to you in all that you are, no matter where it is that you are on the path and journey of life. In our joys and in our triumphs, in our challenges and our sorrows, we hold all that we are as we join together in worship. We hope that you will find a place for yourself here, even if you're uncertain about what you might find here, even if you're uncertain about whether you'll be cared for and welcomed. Ours is a table that is both broad and long, and we hope that you'll join as we sit at this shared table together. So as we settle into this time to quiet our hearts and broaden our minds to meaning, I invite you to hear these opening words from Reinhold Niebuhr, a prayer that you know as the Serenity Prayer in its original form, with some slight UU adaptations. Spirit of life and love, the God of our own understanding, may we have grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, the courage to change the things which should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other. I'll repeat these words once more. Spirit of life and love, the God of our own understanding, may we have grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, the courage to change the things which should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other. And as it is popularly said, may we have this serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so come, let us worship now together. As Dan comes forward to light our chalice this morning, the symbol of our faith and the light that we believe is within each and every human heart, I will read these words. We light the chalice today to illuminate addiction, so we can see it from all sides and keep it from hiding. And now we will sound our singing bowl, calling us into this sacred time together. I invite you to listen to its sound as it dissipates into the silence. And now, let us hear our opening song with Dan Worthington and Julie Gobbets.
For me to Good morning. My name is Chris Lautz, and I'm the chairman of the membership committee, and I've been a member of this UU for about 5 years. And in keeping with today's theme, I am a book reading addict. And you say, well, that's not so bad. Well, if you read a book all day to avoid reality or avoid doing something, it is not necessarily good. So just throwing that out there. I was raised a Methodist, this being the compromise religion my Catholic raised father and my Presbyterian raised mother decided on. We got religious education, but religion wasn't really a high priority in our house. I remember at some point being dropped off at the curb to attend service. Through my young adult years, I visited several churches. I was agnostic for a time. I was atheist. I just kind of bounced around. And getting involved with yoga directed me towards being spiritual. I remember during my atheist period, I was talking to one of my younger brothers and his wife. He had converted to Catholic, so he was very hardcore at that point. When I mentioned I didn't believe in God, they both told me I was going to hell. Well, I don't believe in hell, but I found it very sad that a religion had my brother condemning me to hell. Many years later at a family reunion, I brought it up to my brother about how he said I was going to hell, and he denied it. And I said, wrong, you did say it. And he said, well, he's mellowed, and he apologized. So I have not grown up with good feelings towards organized religion. I had never been to a UU church prior to moving to Traverse City. I'd heard of one in Connecticut that some friends attended, so I was interested in checking this one out after I moved here. I wanted a way to meet people being new to the area. So what I found is a group of friendly, open-minded, welcoming, interesting, and involved people. I decided this was a place for me. So I took this next little bit from the UUCGT website, who we are. We are compassionate thinkers and doers. We are diverse in faith, ethnicity, history, and spirituality, but align in our desire to make a difference for good. We think for ourselves and recognize that life experience influences our beliefs more than anything. We need not think alike to love alike. We are a people of many beliefs and backgrounds. And I really liked those words. So once I decide to join something, I usually jump in with both feet. I help out whenever I can, like help setting up or cleaning up in the kitchen for social hour or being a greeter on Sunday morning. Hint, hint. Attend our twice-a-month Wednesday night potluck suppers to get to talk to people in smaller groups, or join Reverend Alex for one of his coffee meets during the week. Join a committee for something you have an interest in. Join in our social justice events, walking or manning our table at an event. Donate food to the food pantry collections. Or after a service, I walk through the sanctuary to pick up the hymnals and orders of service that were left behind, and I put them away. Check out our Getting Involved sheets that are posted on our website on the About Us governance page. I try to take advantage of any education offered, the starting point, the book discussion groups, small group discussions, soul matters groups. We have a lot of things going on. If you want some direction, you can talk to one of the membership committee members that are at the welcome table before or after our service. We have a great place here. We need to help support it with our time, our talent, our labor, and our money. Whatever you can give of any of those are really needed. Get involved, feel connected, join us.
So the pledge drive is important. We got our pledge in. I hope everybody that intends to do so soon. It's important for planning for next year, of course, but we also need help now. We'll be passing the baskets to support our congregation. You'll see on the basket there's two sides, to support our community activities and to support this congregation. You see on the slide here other options for giving for those online or for all of us. Visit the website. Whatever you can do, please. You have a lot of choices. Choose wisely and be generous. In our meditation music, we sing of hope and joy.
So this is an exciting moment for UUCGT as we welcome a community minister into our shared ministry, the Reverend Dr. Wendy Von Corder. Wendy, would you like to come forward? So you might have already seen this announcement in the flash for a couple of weeks, but Wendy is joining us after UUCGT's Board of Trustees voted to affiliate her as our community minister for social justice. This is a historic first for UUCGT, as we haven't yet had a community minister or an affiliated minister before. Even though we haven't had this historically, community ministries themselves are fairly common across other UU congregations. So Reverend Wendy comes to us as a retired colleague of mine, a retired UU minister, after serving the UU Church of Marblehead, Massachusetts for 14 years as its minister. Is that right? And for me, it's a real blessing to have Wendy with us and all of her support in this shared ministry as we work as a congregation to broaden our reach to the wider community around us with social justice and public action. So this is all to say that I'm just so excited for Wendy to join us and strengthen the shared ministry here with us by Wendy's presence. And Wendy and I have actually covenant agreements that really delineate how ministry will be shared together and among the congregation. Wendy's will primarily exist in the wider community, so outside of the walls of our congregation. And Wendy, of course, is very understanding of this and our differences between our roles. And to formalize this together and with the congregation, we'll ask you to participate in a shared covenant reading together that you'll find in the insert of your orders of service. And so Tom is, Wendy, do you want to come and stand maybe here?
Tell me where to go. Most will take direction.
We don't often do a lot of stuff up in front here, but Jeff, how is that with the mics? Is that okay? Okay. Wave your hands if we start getting any interference. So Tom, will you go ahead and start us off?
I certainly will. Good morning. I'm Tom Darnton. I serve this congregation as a member of the Board of Trustees. Ministry is a communal enterprise. It draws from our collective strengths, aspirations, loves, and seeks to make these real by offering them to others. Person by person, we create ever-widening circles of community. As a member of the Board of Trustees, I now ask all members of UUCGT to join with me as we enter in this covenant between UUCGT and the Reverend Dr. Wendy Von Corder, found in your order of service.
And will the congregation join in saying the next phrase?
This is my covenant with you, the members of UUCGT. I will serve this congregation as its community minister for social justice. I join with you in our shared life as a religious community. As an ordained Unitarian Universalist minister, I will uphold the professional and ethical standards of the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association and the Ministerial Fellowship Committee. With our shared ministry, I will serve Unitarian Universalism and the wider Grand Traverse community by promoting social justice and creating opportunities for faithful witness.
As the senior minister of UUCGT, this is my covenant to you, Reverend Wendy, and to this congregation. I will work with you and respect you as a colleague in ministry. I will respect that your ministry is primarily outside of these walls. I will offer you counsel and feedback when appropriate to strengthen the work you do and the gifts you bring here. And I will also welcome your reflections and any counsel you have for me. I will continue to uphold our respective roles so that we may together support the ministry of UUCGT.
Reverend Alex, as a community minister of UUCGT, this is my covenant with you. I will work with you and respect you as a colleague in ministry. I will respect that your call to ministry is primarily to this congregation and how this congregation relates to the larger world community. I will offer you counsel and feedback when appropriate to strengthen the work that you do and the gifts that you bring here. I will also welcome your reflections and any counsel you may have for me. I will continue to uphold our respective roles so that we may together support the ministry of UUCGT.
Now let us all join as the gathered community.
I commit myself to upholding and living into these covenants. May they light our way to further realize our values of love and service in the world. I thank you for the chance to serve you, to serve with you, and grounded in the religious community we share, to serve others in your name.
Let's welcome Wendy with a round of applause. It is our practice as a community of faith here to set aside time in our service to name and honor the joys and concerns that touch our lives, those milestones and moments of all of our lived experiences that we know must be shared with others. So I will be sharing some of those joys and concerns that have been offered up for us to hold on our hearts as we are gathered. If you have a concern or a joy that's a bit too heavy, I always invite you to reach out to myself or to a member of our congregational care team to light a candle at any point in our service if that speaks to you, or to simply hold it on your heart as you are held in the love of this community. None of us is ever meant to travel life's journey alone. And so here is what has been offered up for us to hold as we are gathered. From Sylvia, prayers for Viv and Jim. From Judy, holding our friend Jan Zerbel in the light. She lost her son, Jay, to cancer this week. We will help take care of her broken heart for as long as it takes. From Holly, I am so thankful that Wendy Von Corder has agreed to join our UU community. Her work has been so impactful in so many communities, and we are better for her presence. Thank you, Wendy. And now let us take a moment to hold all of the joys and concerns that remain in the silence of our hearts. And will you please join me in a spirit of meditation and prayer? Spirit of life, love, and generosity, as we draw near to one another and that still small voice within ourselves, may we open ourselves to each minute, each hour, and each day of our lives. May we find a refuge in this place, this congregation, filled to the brim with the blessings of love and connection. May we be open to fully seeing our past thoughts and actions, knowing that as we cannot change the past, here is a place where we can begin again in love. As we repair our relationships with others and our communities, may we also open our hearts to the repair of what feels broken within ourselves. As we open our hearts and make ourselves vulnerable, may we seek a greater understanding and a fuller peace. May we trust in the resilience of the human spirit to make it through that which feels impossible or even insurmountable, through those times for which there are no words and there is no clear path forward. May we trust in the love that holds all as we endeavor to try again, to right our relationships and our wrongs, and to follow love's embrace once more. And for all this I say, may it be so, and amen. Dan will now share with you this morning's reading.
Our reading today is an article titled "The Science of Addiction" from Shatterproof, a nonprofit dedicated to reversing the addiction crisis in the U.S. Here's what they have to say about the science of addiction. Addiction is a treatable mental illness. First things first, addiction is not a moral failing, a choice, or a character flaw. Addiction, also referred to as substance use disorder, is an illness. All major health experts agree. The American Medical Association, the National Institutes of Health, the World Health Organization, and more. Treatment for addiction is highly effective. Decades of scientific research show that what treatments work best, but one size does not fit all. How does addiction affect the body? It has a lot to do with brain chemistry. The human brain is wired to reward us when we do something pleasurable. You know that. Exercising, eating, and other behaviors that are directly linked to our survival trigger the release of dopamine. This not only makes us feel good, but it encourages us to keep doing what we're doing. It teaches our brains to repeat the behavior. Substances trigger that same part of the brain, the reward system. This process tells the brain that this is a behavior that should be remembered and repeated. An addicted brain causes behavior changes. Brain imaging studies from people with substance use disorders show change in areas of the brain that are critical to judgment, decision-making, learning, and memory, and behavior control. Scientists believe that these changes alter the way the brain works and may help explain the compulsive and destructive behaviors of addiction. A promising student might see his grades slip. A bubbly social butterfly might suddenly have trouble getting out of bed. A trustworthy sibling might start stealing or lying. Scientific research has shown that 40 to 60% of the likelihood that a person will develop addiction comes from genetics. This includes both family history of the illness as well as the effects of environmental factors have on a person's gene expression. Exposure to traumatic experiences has been shown to increase a person's risk of developing a substance use disorder. These experiences could happen at school, at home, or out in the community. Substance use alone doesn't cause addiction. Addiction is a complex illness that arises in a person based on their unique circumstances.
As I begin this sermon, I want to invite you to close your eyes if you feel comfortable, and to imagine that you are a wanderer in the desert. You've been wandering in this tough heat for 3 days. You feel the sweltering sun on your neck and back, the fatigue and exhaustion of your body and muscles. You feel parched and thirsty, the deepest thirst that you've ever experienced. By some sheer miracle or happenstance, you find on your path as you're wandering a home where someone invites you in to rest. They place an ice-cold glass of water right in front of you and strike up a conversation, though you miss every piece of what they're saying. All you can think about is that tall, ice-cold glass of water that's right there in front of you, and how you so badly need to drink from that cup. As you hold this moment on your mind's eye, imagine how you might act, what you might think, how you might feel. Imagine looking at that glass of water sitting right in front of you for just a brief moment. Please open your eyes. This survival mode that we explored in this opening vision is what many people would say it's like to live with an addiction. It's a state of feeling like you really need something, in some cases like you might even die without it, and finding that sense of relief, even if it's only temporary. Our topic for this Sunday service is one that is both heavy and rich, how it is that we understand addiction from both sides, from how it affects an individual, to also how it affects those that an individual knows and loves. When Lauren and Carl Kyneth asked me to preach on this topic after they won the auction item to name a sermon, I immediately felt that this was an important topic for us to explore together. There is a lot of shame involved when we think about addiction. Even the ways we've historically understood what addiction even is and how it is that we can treat it are sometimes out of touch with reality. Religious messaging itself has historically been fairly problematic in its approach to addiction, viewing it as some moral failing or an issue that comes down to a person's character. And so in the Soul Matters month of vulnerability, I want to challenge what you may think you know about addiction. I want to reframe the stigma and shame that many of us feel about addiction and look at it instead through the lens of how addiction really works. In the end, I think there's a spiritual message at the heart of what our addictions seek to fill and what it is that we or our loved ones truly and ultimately need. And so that's the topic that we'll explore today from both sides of what is an important and serious issue. In our reading from the organization Shatterproof, we gain a glimpse into the actual science of what addiction is and how it works to affect our minds and our bodies. Instead of it being a moral failing, a choice, or even a character flaw, addiction is fundamentally a treatable illness. Also known as substance use disorder, addiction affects our bodies and our brains by rewarding our use of substances with these chemical signals, a rush and release of the chemical dopamine to our brains, which often makes us feel good and keeps us doing what we're doing. It's connected to that survival part of our brain that encourages behaviors that our brain associates with survival and staying alive, and it triggers what is called the reward system. What's interesting is looking at how a person develops an addiction in the first place. As the authors write, there is a 40 to 60% likelihood that a person will develop an addiction from their genetics. This includes both the family history of the illness, as well as the effects environmental factors have on a person's gene expression. And so our biology, our physiology, and our genetics have a large say in whether we develop a substance use disorder. Using a substance on its own does not automatically lead to an addiction. It's also important to note that a person's exposure to trauma and to traumatic experiences also increases a person's risk of developing a substance use disorder. And above all, addiction is everywhere. If it's not something we wrestle with, it is absolutely something that someone in our lives wrestles with, somebody we know, or maybe even somebody we love. So addiction itself is not a character flaw. It is not because you have bad morals or values. It is a medical illness, and it is treatable. When we think about substance use disorder, it's important to consider what it is that people are seeking from their addictions and their use of substances. Think back to that ice-cold glass of water sitting before you, your throat feeling dry and parched after wandering in the desert for 3 days. Our use of substances is an attempt to bring about peace, calm, joy, and control in our lives, even if just for a brief moment. When we use substances, we're attempting to numb ourselves. We're trying to find relief from a life, from the sweltering heat that we experience, that we cannot seem to escape. Instead, what we find is that these sensations are only temporary. Though we drink from that ice-cold cup right in front of us, we remain thirsty. It's not enough, ultimately, to quench our thirst. We find that we need more, that the single one-time use itself isn't quite enough. And so we quest after these things, the relief, the rush, the momentary sensations that can help make our lives more bearable. We seek something greater beyond what these substances can offer, something that we don't currently have in our lives, but that we desperately need. Peace, joy, hope, and connection. Ultimately, this is what drives our addictions. Our brains are hardwired into that reward cycle where we endlessly quest after that which we find missing or absent in our lives, which eventually gets in the way of our living. That's it. That's what addiction is truly all about. Thinking back to last Sunday's service on radical vulnerability, the researcher Dr. Brené Brown tells us that shame itself is the primary driver of disconnection. How our shame divides us not only within ourselves, but also from those around us. Shame is toxic to our connections to one another. And yet, what we find is that shame is still at the heart of how we view addiction and substance use in our society. We've inherited so much toxicity in how we understand addictions, messages that we've received from everywhere, from Hollywood, from even reality TV. How many of you are familiar with that cliche trope of interventions? That one where a family or group of people surprises someone with an addiction by surrounding them and telling them that they'll be cut off unless they change. Anybody familiar with that? Well, it turns out this isn't the most helpful approach. With the threat of disconnection, while somebody is already so disconnected from something else in their lives. And yet what we gain from these tropes and messages is all of those same inherited stigmas and judgments over things that we or our loved ones actually have limited control over. We wouldn't necessarily judge others or ourselves as harshly over having a broken arm or a fractured wrist. If someone has an addiction, they have an illness, not a character flaw or a moral failing. It's not that simple. I want to explore the true disconnectedness, not just at the heart of our shame, but also at the heart of an addiction, what an individual experiences in the whole cycle of substance use and even abuse. I want to tell you a story of a woman named Gina, who has struggled with her addiction since she was 13. A few years ago, she writes, I was out getting high and fell 20 feet and broke my back and wrist, and I stayed unconscious. My family had to prepare my funeral, and addiction is the only disease that convinces you that you don't have a disease. It's cunning, baffling, and powerful. Following this experience, Gina recovered her strength and healed, but continued to use substances. It wasn't until she had a moment of clarity that she realized she really needed to ask for help, something that was really, really hard to do. And so Gina found her inner strength and reached out to a crisis center. She writes, "I had been to 11 rehabs before that day, but that time it was the first time I finally said, I don't have a home. And I haven't had one in 4 years." What Gina realized was that she needed connection, a stronger support system than she already had in her life. She already didn't feel like she had a home or a family. She found a social worker who really fought for her. She found support through her friends she made going to meetings. And in the end, she even found a pathway toward reconnecting with her family. For Gina, in spite of the shame and anguish, what she ultimately needed was greater support and connection. She needed to find faith in herself that she really was somebody, that she was loved, and that she had others who were on this journey with her. And so through Gina's story, I hope you hear how important connection was on her road to recovery. I want to pivot now for us to hear about what our loved ones experience in light of our substance use and our addictions. Our next story is told through the eyes of Carly, whose brother Neil struggled with addiction starting in his early teens. In her words, over time, the trouble began. Of course, he would try to hide it, but I saw he was fading. The brother that I knew was being replaced by a shadow of a person, hollow and cold. Carly watched as her big brother grew weak, and she saw how Neil became dependent on substances and would even get sick when he didn't take them. Suddenly, her big brother had disappeared from the house overnight. But truthfully, he was well gone before then. As it happens, Neil had left home and had sought recovery at a rehab center only hours away from where they lived. And Carly noticed this dramatic shift in how he started to change. As she describes it, in his darkest days, my brother had grown to be irritable and full of rage. I could see how the shadow still lingered in the air around him, but not in the same way. The aggression had dissolved, replaced by playful sarcasm and jokes. Neil was now strong. He was returning to the big brother that I grew up with and loved. He may think of himself as weak, but my big brother is the strongest person I know. So what Carly and her mother and family experienced was a complete personality change, something that is common for those who watch someone they love struggle with an addiction. Carly noticed how absent her big brother had become because of his substance use, and Neil had even grown aggressive and angry, taking this out on his family and friends. Yes, Neil was disconnected from life, but so too was his family, disconnected from the person that they knew and they loved. Addiction and substance use had not just impacted Neil, but it had impacted all of those who were around him. Thankfully, this is a story that also ends in greater connection. But unfortunately, greater connection is not something that's always possible. Too many stories out there result in death. Even more, sometimes the pain in our relationships is sometimes too great for us to bear. Sometimes there are great harms that happen either to an individual or someone that they know and love that are not so easy to heal from. Sometimes this pain and this disconnection can leave a lasting mark. Even so, we must ask ourselves, what is it that we need to heal? What is the way forward from here for those who struggle with substance use and for those who so desperately love someone going through it? You see, the opposite of addiction isn't actually sobriety, though sobriety is important. The opposite of addiction is connection. We need to find ways to support either ourselves or those we love with the resources and messages at all levels that we are loved and it is okay for us to ask for help. We need to find ways to connect people who struggle with addiction to what it is and that they find that they are missing in their lives, a sense of joy, of peace, of calm and safety. Connection is the cup that overflows in abundance. It is that thing that we sometimes believe that we are not worthy of, and yet it's the single most important way through our shame and our isolation. Connection is that ice-cold glass of water that will truly quench our thirsts. It is the physical and spiritual manifestation of the love that we must truly believe holds us all. That is our life-saving Unitarian Universalist message toward substance use and addiction. The good news that there is a treatment for what it is that you wrestle with, and that you do not travel this journey alone. For those of you who are struggling with substance use, I want you to know that whether you are using or not, no matter what state you're in, that I love you. If you need me, I will sit with you and accompany you. You are loved, you are worthy, and you are not alone. And all of us are here to support you through this. Because we never quite know who is tuning into our services or when this message is reaching someone, if you need immediate help or you or a loved one is in crisis, please call the National Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services hotline at 1-800-662-HELP or 4357. And if you or anyone you know or love is in immediate danger, please call 911 or reach out to the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. Sometimes the first step is the hardest step to take. Please ask for what you need. Please reach out even if it feels too vulnerable to do so. Know that we care about you, that we love you, even if it feels too scary to mention it, what you're wrestling with, and that we affirm a love that will never let you go. May our great faith in this love and in the power of our connectedness hold us and guide us along the way. May it be so, and amen. Let us sing now our closing hymn, number 360 in your gray hymnals. Here we have gathered. The lyrics will also be up here on the screen. And if you feel moved, please rise in body or in spirit.
Circle
Service has come to an end. Time to put out the chalice. We hope the flame has served well today to illuminate addiction, to keep it from hiding, so we can heal all those who suffer.
And so, in the spirit of covenant, community, and commitment, and also in the spirit of connectedness, may we be made ready to serve one another and to create the world that we so desperately dream of. Go in peace, everyone. It is good to see you this Sunday. May it be so, and amen. I just have a quick announcement from the music committee. We are steadily looking for pianists or those that might be willing to help play some music here at UUCGT on Sundays. So please reach out to Mary Van Valen if you wouldn't mind. Mary, would you raise your hand? If you happen to have any possible leads on some folks that might be interested in playing some music with us. Thank you so much. We'll now head into our time of fellowship. Please go in peace, but also grow in love.